I always believed numbers couldn't lie. Names could, promises could, people could, but numbers were clean, sharp, undeniable. That belief shattered on a Tuesday morning in early April, the kind of morning where the sky is too blue for bad things to happen. I was sitting at the small kitchen table in my one-bedroom apartment, nursing a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. The acceptance email was still open on my laptop screen, glowing like proof that every sacrifice I'd ever made had been worth it. Congratulations, Olivia Harper. I reread that line at least 10 times. Full acceptance, top-tier university, out of state, prestigious, expensive. But none of that scared me, because for as long as I could remember, I'd been told, "Don't worry about college, that's already taken care of." My parents said it casually, like it was a fact of gravity, like the sun rising. "There's a fund," my dad would say. "It's been growing since you were born," my mom would add. "It's in your name." My name. So that morning, after months of applications, essays, and sleepless nights, I logged into the bank portal for the first time as an adult who actually needed the money. I expected relief. What I got was silence. The page loaded slowly, the little spinning wheel mocking me. Then the numbers appeared. Balance, $412.83. I blinked. Once. Twice. I refreshed the page. Still $412.83. My heart began to thud, heavy and uneven, like it was trying to escape my chest. I checked the account number again, same one my mom had emailed me years ago, same one I'd memorized like a password to my future. I scrolled. Transaction history loaded. And that's when I saw it. Withdrawal after withdrawal. Large ones, 6 figures large. My fingers started to shake as I scrolled faster, dates blurring together. Tuition transfers, certified checks, internal account movements. None of them had my signature. None of them were sent to my university. The biggest transfer, $187,000, had been moved out 2 months earlier. Recipient, Educational Trust, M. Harper. M. My younger brother, Mason. The coffee mug slipped from my hands and shattered against the tile floor. I barely noticed. I sat there, staring at the screen, my ears ringing so loudly I thought I might pass out. This wasn't a mistake. Mistakes don't empty accounts. I drove to my parents' house without calling first. I don't remember the drive, only gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, my thoughts crashing into each other like cars in a pileup. Every memory replayed with a new, sickening filter. All those times they told me not to worry. All those times they said, "We'll handle it." All those times Mason struggled and they sighed dramatically about how boys just need more support. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a full minute, my engine still running. Their house looked exactly the same. White siding, perfect lawn, the porch swing my dad refinished last summer. A house built on lies still looks like a home from the outside. I walked in without knocking. The door was unlocked, like it always was. Mom was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. Dad sat at the table, reading the paper like it was 1998. They both looked up. "Oh," my mom said brightly, "you're early. I thought you were working today." I didn't sit down. "Where's my college fund?" The knife froze mid-chop. Dad folded the newspaper slowly, too slowly. My mom cleared her throat. "That's an odd way to start a conversation." "I saw the account," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "The money is gone." Dad leaned back in his chair. "We used it." Used it, like it was leftover paint. "For Mason," Mom added quickly. You know how expensive his program is. I laughed, a sharp, broken sound that didn't match the pressure building behind my eyes. You stole my college fund. My mom winced. Don't use that word. What word would you prefer? Reassigned? Redirected? Because stole feels pretty accurate. Jazz's jaw tightened. That money was never really yours. I felt something crack inside my chest. It was in my name, I said. It was under our management, he replied. Legally. Legally. That word again. Clean, sharp, undeniable. So you decided, I said slowly, without telling me, to give my future to my brother. My mom reached for my hand. I pulled away. Mason needed it more, she said. You've always been capable. Capable. The word they used whenever they wanted to excuse neglect. You'll figure it out, Dad said. You always do. I stared at them. Really stared, like I was seeing strangers wearing my parents' faces. You didn't even ask me, I whispered. My mom's eyes filled with something that looked like guilt, or maybe it was just inconvenience. We didn't think you'd understand. That was the moment something shifted, because they were right. I didn't understand. I left without saying goodbye. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't throw anything. I drove straight to my grandmother's house. Grandma Ruth lived 3 towns over, in the same house she'd lived in since before I was born. It smelled like old books and lemon cleaner, and every inch of it felt safe. She was sitting in her armchair when I walked in, knitting something lumpy and blue. She looked up. One glance at my face and her needles stilled. What did they do? She asked. I collapsed onto the floor at her feet and broke apart. The words came out in gasps, tangled and messy, but she listened without interrupting. Her face hardened with every sentence. When I finished, she didn't comfort me. She got angry. Not loud, not explosive, cold. They took it, she said softly. All of it? Yes. And gave it to your brother? Yes. She set her knitting down with care and stood up, her movements slow but deliberate. That money, she said, came from your grandfather. I looked up. He worked 2 jobs after the factory laid him off, she continued, so you wouldn't have to beg or borrow. He named that fund for you himself. My throat tightened. They had no right, she said. I laughed bitterly. Apparently they did. Grandma Ruth smiled then, but it wasn't a kind smile. Oh, Olivia, she said, rights and consequences aren't the same thing. She walked to her desk and pulled out her phone. What are you doing? I asked. Making sure, she said, scrolling, that everyone knows exactly who your parents are. My heart skipped. Grandma, they humiliated you quietly, she said. I prefer noise. She started dialing, and that's when I realized this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Grandma's first call wasn't to a lawyer. It was to someone who loved to talk, and by morning, the entire town would know what my parents had done. Grandma Ruth's phone calls didn't sound dramatic. No raised voice, no threats, no tears. Just calm, precise sentences delivered with the weight of truth. Did you hear what my son did? Yes, all of it. No, they didn't ask her. Yes, the money was in Olivia's name. She spoke like she was reading a grocery list, and somehow that made it worse. I sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea I wasn't drinking, listening as she worked her way through a list of names I'd known my entire life. Church friends, book club members, old neighbors. My aunt, Dad's older sister, who had never liked my mother and would absolutely enjoy this information. Grandma, maybe, I started. She held up a finger without looking at me. I raised your father, she said. I know exactly what silence does to people like him. She hung up and dialed again. You don't fix injustice by whispering, she added. By the time I drove back to my apartment that night, my phone had 17 missed calls from my mother, 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. I didn't need to. The first message came the next morning. Not from my parents. From my cousin Leah. Is it true? I stared at the screen. Is what true? I typed back. The reply came instantly. About the college fund. About Mason. My stomach dropped. By noon, the story had grown legs. People didn't just know, their versions were worse. At the grocery store, the cashier I'd known since high school asked softly, "Are you doing okay, sweetheart?" At work, my supervisor pulled me aside and said, "If you need flexibility right now, we understand." I hadn't told anyone. I didn't have to. The town had decided for me. My parents didn't come to apologize. They came to control the narrative. Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced that afternoon, mascara perfect, posture stiff. You should have stopped her, she said, stepping inside like she owned the place. Stopped who? I asked. Your grandmother, she snapped. She's spreading lies. I crossed my arms. Which part was the lie? Her lips pressed into a thin line. This is private family business. You made it public when you emptied my account. She shook her head like I was being unreasonable. People don't need to know our finances. They needed to know my future didn't matter to you. That did it. Her composure cracked. You are not a victim, she said sharply. We raised you, we fed you, we paid for everything. And I paid you back, with obedience, with silence, with lowered expectations. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. That word again. Tell me something, I said. If I hadn't checked the account, if I'd found out when tuition was due, what was your plan? She didn't answer. Were you going to tell me then? I pressed, or let me drown and call it character building? Her eyes flicked away. That was answer enough. Dad didn't show up. He called, and he didn't yell, which scared me more. You've embarrassed us, he said. No, I replied, you embarrassed yourselves. You had no right to involve my mother. I laughed. She involved herself when she found out you stole from her granddaughter. Silence. Then, quietly, Mason needed it. There it is, I said. That's the whole argument. You're older, he continued. You had time to prepare. For money you told me existed, I snapped. Money you told me not to worry about. We didn't think you'd actually go somewhere so expensive. I closed my eyes. So this was the truth. They never believed I'd leave. You never planned for my success, I said softly. You planned for my compliance. He hung up. Mason texted that night. I didn't ask for this. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, but you accepted it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I thought you knew. I almost threw my phone. I found out yesterday, I typed. You've been in school for 2 months. No reply. That hurt more than the theft. By the end of the week, my parents' social circle had shifted. Invitations dried up, whispers followed them at church. The PTA president, Mom's closest ally, needed space. Small towns don't forgive quietly. They remember. And Grandma Ruth made sure they remembered accurately. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't add drama. She told the truth. Over and over. Then came the email. From the university. Your enrollment deposit is due within 10 days. I stared at the screen, panic creeping in. This was the part my parents hadn't planned for. They assumed I'd figure it out, like always. I called the financial aid office with shaking hands. I explained everything. They listened, and then they said something that changed everything. There may be options, the counselor said, but we'll need documentation. Documentation. Proof. I thought of the account statements, the transfers, the signatures. I thought of the way Dad had said, legally. And for the first time since this began, I felt something close to power. That night, Grandma Ruth invited me to dinner. She cooked too much, as always. Halfway through the meal, she slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Something your grandfather insisted on," she said, "just in case." Inside was a copy of the original trust paperwork. My name. Only my name. No clauses about redistribution. No language about siblings. No permission. I looked up, breathless. "They broke faith," she said, "and possibly the law." My heart pounded. "What do we do?" She smiled, slow, satisfied. "We stop letting them tell the story." The next step wasn't confrontation, it was preparation, and my parents had no idea what was coming. There's a strange calm that settles in once you stop begging for fairness and start preparing for it. I didn't wake up angry anymore. I woke up focused. Every morning I sat at my tiny desk with a legal pad and wrote one word at the top of the page. Facts. Not feelings, not memories, not betrayals. Facts didn't cry. Facts didn't get dismissed as dramatic. Facts held weight. The financial aid counselor at the university, Marissa, became my lifeline. She didn't promise miracles, she promised clarity. "Bring everything you have," she said over the phone. "Statements, trust documents, communications." So I did. I printed every transaction from the account dating back 3 years. I highlighted the 6-figure withdrawal in neon yellow like it was a crime scene, because it was. I pulled emails from my parents where they told me not to worry about money. I saved text messages where they reassured me the fund was safe. I even recorded dates and times of conversations, writing them down while they were still fresh. When I showed Grandma Ruth, she nodded approvingly. "Your father always thought confidence was the same thing as authority," she said. "Paper humbles men like him." The lawyer came next. Not a flashy one, not an expensive one, a practical one. A woman named Denise Carter, who had sharp eyes and didn't waste words. She read everything, silently, for a long time. Then she looked up at me. "They assumed you wouldn't fight," she said. My throat tightened. "Can I?" She leaned back. "They managed a trust in your name. They redistributed funds without your consent. That's problematic." Problematic was lawyer language for very bad. "What about Mason?" I asked. "He's already used some of it." Denise sighed. "That complicates things, but it doesn't erase wrongdoing." Grandma Ruth placed her hand over mine. Her grandfather didn't work himself sick for this. Denise nodded. "No, he didn't." She slid a folder toward me. This isn't about revenge, she continued. It's about leverage. Leverage. Another clean word. I liked it. My parents found out I'd hired a lawyer the same way they found out everything now, from someone else. Dad called that night furious. "You're threatening us?" he demanded. "I'm protecting myself," I replied. "You're tearing this family apart." I almost laughed. "You tore it apart when you decided I didn't deserve what was promised." There was a pause. Then his voice dropped. "You won't win," he said quietly. "You know that, right?" That old tone, the one meant to shrink me. "I don't need to win," I said. "I just need the truth on record." He hung up. Mason showed up 2 days later, at my door. He looked thinner than I remembered, tired, guilty. "I didn't know it was yours," he said immediately. I didn't invite him in. "It had my name on it." "They told me it was family money," he said, "that you'd agreed." I studied his face, searching for the brother who used to sneak me candy when our parents weren't looking. "Did you ask me?" I said. He looked down. "I needed it," he whispered. There it was again. Need. Always enough to justify taking from me. "I'm not asking you to drop out," I said. "I'm asking you to be honest." He swallowed. "They said if I told you, you'd overreact." I laughed softly. "And you believed them." He nodded. I closed the door gently, not because I forgave him, but because I was done explaining. The town buzzed louder as the weeks passed. People chose sides, some quietly, some loudly. At the coffee shop, I overheard someone say, "If they'd do that to their own daughter." At church, my parents started sitting closer to the exit. Grandma Ruth attended every service, chin high, unbothered. "Shame," she said one morning, "only works if you accept it." Then came the letter. From Denise. She slid it across the table during our next meeting. "This is a formal demand," she explained. "Return of funds or we proceed." My hands trembled as I read it. It wasn't aggressive, it was factual. Dates, amounts, legal references. The kind of document that doesn't raise its voice because it doesn't need to. "They'll try to negotiate," Denise said, "or intimidate, or discredit you." "I'm ready," I said. And I was. Or so I thought. The retaliation was subtle. At first. Mom called my employer, pretending to be concerned. "She's under a lot of stress," she said. "I just wanted to make sure she's stable." My supervisor told me immediately. Dad told relatives I was being manipulated by Grandma. Mason told people I'd cut him off emotionally. They were rewriting me, painting me as ungrateful, vindictive, unstable. Old patterns, new consequences. I documented everything. The university called again. This time, the tone was different. "We've reviewed your case," Marissa said. "There's a hardship appeal option, but we need confirmation that legal action is underway." I smiled for the first time in days. "It is," I said. That night, Grandma Ruth brought out a photo album, pictures of my grandfather, of me as a child sitting on his shoulders. "He believed in you before you did," she said. I held the photo like a promise. "I won't let them erase this," I said. She squeezed my hand. "Good, because they're about to realize something." "What?" "That you're not the quiet one anymore." My parents responded to the demand letter 3 days later, and their answer changed everything. Their response didn't come as a phone call. It came as an envelope. Cream-colored, heavy paper, my father's handwriting on the front, precise, controlled, unmistakable. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the counter for a full hour like a test of will, because I already knew what it wouldn't contain: an apology. Grandma Ruth watched me from the kitchen table, saying nothing. She had that look again, the one she wore when she already knew the ending but wanted me to see it for myself. When I finally slid my finger under the seal, the paper whispered open. Inside were 3 pages, and a check. Page 1 was calm, reasonable, carefully worded. We regret that this matter has escalated. Family disagreements should be handled privately. We acknowledge that communication could have been clearer. Not wrong, just unclear. Page 2 did what page 1 avoided. It blamed me. Your reaction has caused unnecessary distress. Public involvement has damaged reputations. Legal action will only deepen divisions. Page 3 was the real message. An offer, a partial return of funds, not the full amount, not even close. Enough, however, to look generous to anyone who didn't know the numbers. The check was paper-clipped to the last page. I stared at it. My father had always understood optics. "Don't touch it," Grandma said quietly. I wasn't going to. Because the check came with conditions: a release of claims, a confidentiality clause, an agreement to refrain from further discussion. Silence purchased, compliance priced, my future discounted. I laughed then, not loudly, not hysterically, just a soft, incredulous sound. "They think this fixes it?" I said. Grandma shook her head. "They think it scares you." Denise wasn't surprised. She never was. "This is standard," she said over the phone. "They're testing your resolve." "It's less than half," I said. "I know. And they want me quiet." "Of course they do." I closed my eyes. "What happens if I refuse?" "They escalate," Denise replied calmly, "or they fold." "Which one do you think?" She paused. "Your father doesn't like losing control. My guess? He escalates first." That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from relatives who suddenly wanted to understand both sides, messages from people who'd never checked on me before but now felt qualified to give advice. "Take the money and move on. Family is more important than pride. You'll regret burning bridges." No one asked what it felt like to be pushed off one. Mason called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Dad's freaking out," he said. "Mom hasn't slept. This is getting out of hand." Out of hand, like I was the one waving it. "They're offering something," he continued. "You should take it, for everyone's sake." For everyone's sake, not mine. I deleted the voicemail. The next morning, something unexpected happened. My aunt, the one Grandma had called first, showed up at my door. She hugged me without asking. "I knew it," she said. "I always knew." She told me stories I'd never heard, about how my parents borrowed money and never returned it, about how my father once redirected funds meant for a joint project and blamed confusion. Patterns. Always patterns. "I won't testify against my brother," she said quietly, "but I won't lie for him either." That mattered, more than she knew. The retaliation grew bolder. My parents stopped subtlety. Dad emailed Denise directly, accusing her of manipulating me. Mom told church friends I was financially unstable. Someone leaked that I was in trouble at work. I wasn't, but rumors don't need truth. They just need repetition. Denise advised me to stay silent. "Let them overreach," she said. "People reveal themselves when they panic." And panic they did. The university called again, this time with good news. Your hardship appeal is approved, Marissa said. Provisional enrollment. We'll reassess once the legal matter resolves. I sank onto the couch, breath leaving my body in a rush. I wasn't blocked. I wasn't stopped. I was delayed. There was a difference. When Denise received my parents' formal response to the refusal, her voice sharpened. "They've made a mistake," she said. "What kind?" "They admitted, in writing, that the funds were designated for you." My heart pounded. "That wasn't in the original trust," I said. "No, but it strengthens your claim." The clean words again. Facts. Paper. Wait. Then came the call I didn't expect. From my father. Not angry, not cold, tired. "You've made your point," he said. "Let's end this." "You can return the money," I replied. "All of it." A pause. "That's not realistic." "Neither was stealing my future," I said. His voice hardened. "You think you're winning?" "I think I'm done losing," I said. He exhaled sharply. "You'll destroy us." "No," I replied. "I'll survive you." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but my voice hadn't. That evening, Grandma Ruth brought out another envelope. Smaller. Older. "I was hoping I wouldn't need this," she said. Inside was a handwritten letter from my grandfather, addressed to me, dated years before he died. "If you're reading this," it began, "then someone has failed you." My chest tightened. Money reveals character. So does what people do when they think you won't fight. Tears blurred the page. "Don't be small to keep others comfortable." I folded the letter carefully. "They never counted on him," Grandma said softly. "They never counted on you," I replied. The court filing went in the next morning. Official. Public. Irreversible. Denise called an hour later. "They're requesting mediation," she said. I smiled. The first real crack. Mediation meant sitting across from my parents, face to face, with witnesses, and this time, they wouldn't control the story. Mediation didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a beige conference room that smelled like stale coffee and false neutrality. A long table, a box of tissues no one wanted to claim, a mediator who smiled too much, and my parents, sitting across from me like we were strangers who shared a last name. Dad wore his reasonable suit. Mom wore the necklace she saved for church and judgment. Mason sat beside them, eyes down. I took the chair opposite them. Grandma Ruth sat behind me, silent, unmovable, witness. The mediator began with practiced calm. "We're here to resolve this amicably." Dad nodded. Mom dabbed imaginary tears. I said nothing, because I had learned something important over the last few months. Silence terrifies people who depend on control. They spoke first. Dad talked about miscommunication. Mom talked about intentions. Mason talked about pressure. No one said choice. No one said accountability. When it was my turn, I slid a folder across the table. No speeches, no dramatics. Just paper. Trust documents, bank statements, emails. The demand letter, their response. Facts stacked neatly, like bricks. The mediator's smile faded as she read. Dad shifted in his chair. Mom crossed her arms. Mason finally looked up. "This fund," the mediator said slowly, "was designated for Olivia alone." "Yes," Dad said quickly, "but under our management." "Management does not imply ownership," the mediator replied. Silence fell. Heavy. Then the mediator looked at my parents. "You transferred nearly the entire balance without consent," she continued, "and without disclosure." Mom opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time, they had no version that fit the facts. They tried one last time.
"We're willing to be generous," Dad said, "for peace." I finally spoke. "I'm not here for generosity," I said. "I'm here for what's mine." My voice didn't shake. Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize the person sitting across from her. Maybe she didn't. The offer changed, then changed again. Numbers moved. Conditions disappeared. Silence clauses evaporated. Because once the truth is public, it doesn't sell cheaply. After 4 hours, the mediator leaned back. "This is my recommendation," she said. "Full restitution of remaining funds. Repayment plan for what has already been spent. Legal fees covered." Dad's face drained of color. Mom whispered, "That will ruin us." I met her eyes. "No," I said quietly. "It will inconvenience you. There's a difference." Mason spoke then, for the first time, honestly. "I'll take loans," he said. "I'll work. I don't want this." Dad snapped toward him. "Sit down." But Mason didn't. He looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have asked." I nodded. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement.
The agreement was signed. Hands shook. Pens scratched. And just like that, months of gaslighting collapsed into ink. When we stood to leave, my parents didn't look at me. They didn't hug me. They didn't apologize. They didn't need to, because consequences don't require closure. They require acceptance. The town found out the same way it found out everything, quietly, accurately. This time, the whispers followed my parents, not me. People who once advised me to keep the peace avoided eye contact, because peace built on sacrifice only ever asks the same person to bleed. I moved into student housing that fall. Not glamorous, not easy, but mine. I paid tuition with money that had my name on it, just like it always had. I framed my grandfather's letter and hung it above my desk. On hard days, I read it. "Don't be small to keep others comfortable."
My parents and I don't talk now. Not because I hate them, but because distance is sometimes the healthiest boundary. Mason texts occasionally. We're rebuilding, slowly, on honest ground. Grandma Ruth comes to every milestone, front row, always smiling. People sometimes ask if it was worth it. The stress, the fallout, the silence. I tell them this. I didn't fight for money. I fought for the version of myself that deserved truth. And I won.
If this story made you uncomfortable, good. That means you recognized something real. If you've ever been told to stay quiet for family, if your needs were dismissed as inconvenience, if you were expected to sacrifice because you were strong enough, this is your reminder. Strong doesn't mean silent. Loyal doesn't mean disposable. And love that costs your future isn't love at all. If this story resonated with you, like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment if you've lived something similar. You're not alone. And remember, the truth doesn't destroy families. Secrets do.